Hello, everybody. That was very responsive. How excellent. I'm going to talk about user notifications in iOS 10. I tend to walk around a lot when I'm speaking. I'll try and stay near the mic, or if I move away, I'll shout more. The title, who's a fan of ABBA? No, nor me. However, for some reason I decided that there was going to be an ABBA pun in the title. Well, that's not helping, is it? There, that's better. And I can't do that. Oh, ignore me. That screwed that up. Ignore the ABBA pun. Anyway, I have this thing, when there's a massive screen, I cannot resist putting a massive photo of my face up. So that's a massive photo of my... That's a massive photo of my face. You can see it here as well, and I can do that sign. That's me. My name is Sam. And since we're starting with Wikipedia quotes, I thought I'd look myself up on Wikipedia. I was born on the 23rd of August 1974 in Portsmouth, and I'm a British yachtswoman. Believe it or not, I'm not a British yachtswoman. However, that was the joy of Wikipedia. So I'm talking about user notifications. Now, what are they? Now, to kind of gauge a little bit about where we are and what we're talking about, how many people went to WWDC? A few, good. How many people watched a few dub videos? There. How many people watched more than 10? How many people watched more than 30? How many people watched more than 50? Okay, so that's good, because I watched those, so you don't have to, because they're dry as something that's very dry. So what are user notifications? You probably already know. It's just the notifications that you see in iOS when somebody sends you a message, like a push notification or a local notification. It's not to be confused with Notification Center. Helpfully, two things that have quite similar names that do completely different things and now have quite different APIs. Notification Center is the ability to talk, to send messages in some kind of pub subsystem within your app and to receive stuff from outside your app. Notifications, nice little things that appear on the screen. So, they've existed for a very long time. Many versions of iOS, I'm not a historian, but they've evolved as well over the time. So what are the problems with the old way? They conflated source and display. That means that local notifications were kind of mixed in with push notifications and the display of those notifications, which became more challenging when privacy kind of became a thing as well. You're operating in a vacuum. You have no idea what notifications are scheduled, what they're going to do. You can't really interact with them. As I said, the API's kind of evolved. It wasn't designed. So it started out back in the day as, well, this is quite cool. We can send notifications. And then push notifications came along. And then you could start adding more stuff to your notifications. So it kind of became an evolved API. And as we all know, if you evolve an API, it turns into a turd. And finally, manual in-app display. This thing drove me up the wall. If your app is open in the foreground and you receive a notification, nothing happens. Or you get told about it, but if you want to display it to the user, you had to do that yourself, right? You had to create your own alert view or whatever it was that you wanted to do, which was a bit of a pain and didn't really make a whole lot of sense. So, new in iOS 10 is the user notifications framework, which fixes all of those issues. And we'll see roughly what that means in a minute. You can also query for the permission status. So if you're inside your app and you want to know, what am I allowed to display? If I try and display a local user notification, what will they see? What have they allowed me to show? That's quite useful, right? Am I allowed to do badges, alerts, banners, sounds, all that kind of stuff? I can now find out really easily. You can do some kind of management of local notifications. So rather than just pushing them off into the ether and hoping that that works, you can look and see which ones are pending, which ones have already been delivered, and interact with them. You can do some custom UI, which is quite cool, and we'll look at that. And finally, that's probably the most important of all of them. That's the thing that makes it look quite cool. And like when you're using iOS 10 and you get messages and you can reply in line in the notification, you can build that now yourself. And finally, you can mutate push notifications, which sounds really tedious and dull, but it's got some quite cool uses. So, I'm just going to do a really quick run through how to use this new framework, starting out with authorization. So, authorization, for privacy reasons, well, this isn't really privacy. I guess this is for not irritating your users. You have to ask them, please, can I send you send you user notifications? Can I interrupt whatever you're doing with a little pop-up display? That hasn't changed. The way in which you do it has. It's very similar to many other authorization requests. In terms of authorization requests in iOS, we're in kind of a funny state where all the new style ones use nice kind of functional callbacks to tell you, yes, you can, to tell you the status of whether or what the user says. The old style ones use delegates. This is in the new style, so you'll recognize that. You don't need an info plist usage string because they're more associated with privacy. And you still have to request for remote notifications. So you're requesting, when you use user notifications, for the ability to show something to somebody. Asking whether or not you're allowed to push notifications to them is still in exactly the same way as you used to do it on the application itself. And you get the response back through the application delegate. So authorization. As part of the new framework, there's this new thing called UN User Notification Center. You get hold of the current one, I guess like the default one, with this current static method. I don't know why, somebody might know, why it's a static class method as opposed to a property. I don't know. If anybody does know, answers on a postcard. And then you call this request authorization thing, and as I said, so you specify what you want, so you can have alerts, sounds, and badges. And then you apply a closure at the end, which tells you whether or not you were successful. Really quite simple. As part of that authorization, as I said, you can now get some kind of idea of whether or not you have permission to show notifications. You can still schedule them, but they may well never see them. And you can do that on the UN User Notification Center class, just with this get notification settings. And once again, that's an asynchronous method, and you'll be sent back this UN User Notification Settings thing. And I'll show you that when we look at the demo. Oh, in fact, here is the demo. So this will work, won't it? So if I look, I'll just put this one down, and I look inside one of my controllers, this one I think. I think I would have been ready, wouldn't you? Right, this is the one that I'm interested in here, and it's a little bit more complex than it needs to be. I've got dispatch groups and things for something that we're going to show later on. Can you kind of see that? It's fairly simple. We've got this thing where I get the notification settings from the notification center, and then I'm going to pass that settings object into this thing that I've made that will populate a table view section. And it's probably best if I just run this, and we'll hopefully see that it works. Over here. Okay, so you get the same kind of thing that you're used to seeing, and I've asked for alert, sounds, icon, badges, so I'm going to say allow. And then I've populated this thing with all of the stuff that you can get out of that settings object. So things like, am I authorized? Am I allowed to show it in the notification center? Am I allowed to do sound? And all that kind of stuff. And if I jump into the settings app, oops, and then attempt to scroll, come on, there we go. I go into the app, which is delightfully labeled Cuddle Pics, and you might see why later. So if I disable alert notifications and then go back into my app and just refresh this, then you can see that then they all disappear. So you can always request to be told exactly what the notification settings are, and that's quite useful, I think. Refresh that. Okay, so not really very exciting so far. Scheduling. So now I'm talking about how do you actually create a notification and then get it pushed onto the delivery stack, I guess. Now there are 4 different ways. So 4 as in, if you've watched WWDC videos, you have to stand here and go. There are 4 different ways in which you can schedule notifications. First one, push notifications. So exactly the same as you normally would. There is a way to create push notifications, and then they will just arrive at the notifications framework. Time interval, so we're kind of saying, tell me in a minute's time, or tell me every minute. Calendar, tell me on the 21st of December. Or you can do recurring ones in that sense as well, so you can do the 21st of every month or something like that. And kind of geofences, so to do with location when I arrive in an area or leave in an area. So the functionality there hasn't changed at all. How do you go about it? Well, a notification needs some kind of content. And this part, this attachment thing, is new. So I can attach things to my notifications. So here, I'm creating a UN notification attachment. I'm giving it an image. an identifier, and then I give it a URL to an image. Now what the framework will do is go and it'll pull that image and then store it somewhere, not accessible to you, but it'll store it somewhere so that it's ready to display. And then you need to create this UN mutable notification content and set a load of properties on it. Some of them are fairly obvious, things like title, subtitle. Attachments is the array of attachments. I should mention attachments can be all kinds of different things, images, videos, audio, and you can play the video and audio directly in line with the notification. I would say I'll show you that, but I won't, so just imagine it. And then you can give it some kind of body. Finally, the category identifier, in exactly the same way with the old notifications, you give them categories, and that's the way that you get, you add the buttons and you deal with the feedback from those buttons. And finally, this thing here, which I've commented out because I don't actually use it here, but it's quite a cool, new, useful thing, and that's this thread identifier. If you have multiple notifications, all to do with the same thing, if you give them a thread identifier, then iOS will collapse them into a single notification. So you don't end up with a big old screen of 100 different notifications that all look exactly the same. They'll all be nicely collapsed in. I apologise for my phone, but I do need it later on, so maybe if I put it there. So local notifications, right, so all notifications have a trigger. With local notifications, you create your own trigger. And this represents when will this thing actually fire? When will it be triggered? So I've gone for a time interval trigger here. As I said, there's calendar and location as well. And once you've got your trigger and you've got your content, you can create a request for a notification. A request you pass to the framework, and later on that will turn into a notification at the point that the notification is delivered. So you create a request with an identifier. The identifier is quite important because, as you'll see later, that's how you get hold of that same notification again. You give it the content that's going to display and the trigger to tell it, well, when should I display? And then finally down here is yet again another asynchronous method to add that request with a completion handler into the user notification center. Okay, before I go on to give a quick demo of this, I just want to talk about management as well. So this is how do I manage the local notifications? In fact, all notifications, but this part is mainly for local. So on the user notification center, there are 3 methods for allowing you to get hold of pending notifications. Those are ones that you've created and have not yet fired. So either the time hasn't expired or you've not arrived at the right place. And you can grab hold of those with get pending notification requests, and you'll be given back, in an asynchronous method, a UN notification request array of UN notification requests. Similarly, you can remove them, and this here is where you use that identifier that we created before, that unique ID. It doesn't have to be unique because you'd replace it. That ID will allow you to remove notifications. And then you can also just say, I don't want any more notifications as well. So that's pending ones, but there is another state, and that's notifications that have been delivered but not dismissed, i.e., they're probably in your notification center, provided the user allows you to put stuff in the notification center. And you've got the same kind of methods here as well, so you can get a list of the ones that have been delivered but haven't yet been dismissed. You can remove the ones that you want to, and then you can remove all of the ones that your app is responsible for. Oh, and then the other thing that I complained about, in-app delivery, that thing where you had to create your own alert view, don't have to do that anymore. And that is via this. So if you use the user notification delegate and implement this rather attractive delegate method, which I'm sure you can all read, it's UN user notification center will present notification with completion handler, and then, yeah, it's one of those escaping things. Yeah, it looks a bit like that if you chop it up into different lines. This is really simple, right? So if I set myself as a delegate, and then there are 2 methods on this delegate. This one here is for your app is in the foreground, but I want to deliver a notification. And in that case, I call the completion handler and tell it, what do I want to do in terms of display? I can say none, I don't want you to display it, or I can say you're allowed to display a badge, you're allowed to play a sound, or you're allowed to display an alert. And that's all you have to do. That's really cool. The other the other method in the delegate is the more traditional method where you call it, it gets called when your user clicks on one of the action buttons inside the notification. That's just taken straight out of the UI application delegate and into the user notification center delegate. Whew, right, demo. Oh, this is annoying me. Right, I'll try and deal with that. Right, it's in aeroplane mode now, for goodness sake. Right, I'm going to jump onto this next one, and then because I don't have Christoph's magic thing, I have to recompile it. If I can find Xcode. Look, that was quick. I don't know what he's complaining about. So you notice I've now got two new sections down in my table view, the pending notifications and delivered notifications, just using that approach that I showed you before. If I go into here, then I can schedule a cuddle pics. That's a slightly odd thing. So if I do that, and then 5 seconds later, you see it's arrived in pending notifications, it's scheduled, then it gets delivered, and if I force touch on it or whatever you do, you can see that all that notification has, I've given it an attachment of an image, it's downloaded that image, and it's displayed it in line, and it's got these two buttons here, which don't do anything yet, but we'll see later on. And then that disappears into delivered, but in fact, if I refresh, that's not really there, it's gone. Now if I demonstrate that again, but this time, if I get out of there, and hopefully it will arrive, there it is, and if I don't touch it and let it kind of disappear, this didn't work earlier, so we'll see whether or not I fixed it. And so it's still in the notification center, and if I go back into the app and refresh this, you can see it's still in delivered notifications, until the point that I go into here and get rid of it and go back out of here and refresh this, then it disappears out of delivered notifications. The other thing that is of potential interest is that if I just schedule some, then I can just delete those from the queue using that management type API that I told you before. So that stuff there, I mean, there's nothing great there. Pretty much the only thing I've demonstrated there that's any different is you can now stick an image in your notification, or a video, or some audio. But the API for this makes this a lot easier, and you can interact properly with all of the stuff that is queued, is pending, or is delivered. Right. Next then. Custom UI. Now this is where it gets a little bit more interesting, I think, and that's the ability to take those new style notifications and do what you want with them in terms of UI. Already you get the ability, as I said, to show you images and videos and that kind of stuff, but you can go quite a lot further. Basically, you do it through a new extension because everybody loves iOS extensions, they're so easy to work with. Then you create a new extension type, which is what's it called? What's the word? Notification UI extension. And you get given a storyboard, which we all love, and a view controller. You also get some kind of, this kind of, I guess, what's the word? Protocol. This protocol, UN Notification Content Extension, gives you the notification that is responsible for displaying the notification, and then you can use that to update your UI. So that would use this. Right. So this here, this did receive method, it is on that protocol. And within that notification, I can get hold of the notification request. Remember I said that you create a request and that gets turned into a notification. Well, here I can get hold of that request from the notification itself. And then all I'm doing here is I'm going to find the attachment, the first attachment in there, which is going to be an image, because I added an image to it. And I'm going to try and grab hold of that image and then put it in my image view. The only weird thing here is, remember I said that when you create an attachment, you give it a URL, and the system will go off and download that and store it somewhere. Well, it doesn't store it in your app bundle. You don't have access to that. So you have to use this URL, start accessing security scoped resource, when you first want to get hold of that, and then it'll open up some kind of, I don't know, secure thing so that you're allowed to have a go at it. And then when you've finished, you absolutely must stop accessing the security scoped resource. Now, this isn't magically reference counted or something. It's like the olden days. You have to make sure they're balanced. Otherwise, something will happen. I don't know what, but something bad will happen. The other slightly weird thing with this, and this is strange, right? When you do it, well, when I do it in the simulator, these three lines here, I can replace them with like UI image and then the URL. Now, it seems on a device that I guess, and somebody who's far more intelligent than me will probably know, I think that this UI image URL does some kind of magic asynchronous thing, because what happens is it loads part of the image, and then it gets to this part here, and then you're not allowed to access that data anymore. So this one here seems to work, but if you do it with just the way that you might think it would work, it doesn't, as with many things. Okay, interactivity very quickly. So although you get this storyboard, you get a view controller, you can do what you like with it, you can do what you like with it apart from user interaction. You don't get any of the touch stuff, you can't do gesture recognizers, you can't do anything like that at all. However, you can get some interactivity, because in addition to the did receive notification, you can also get this notification response. And that happens when somebody clicks on one of your action buttons. Then you can intercept that in your content UI extension and do something with it. So for example here, I'm looking to see, is the action the star action? Because if it is, then I'm going to show some stars. Quite simple. So let's try and demo this. Oh no, not you. Just recompile it. Have a little drink. Okay. So if I didn't actually show you what I've done yet. Let's have a look at the code first. So I've created this content extension, really simple, basic, the way that you create any extension. And as I said, it creates a view controller and a storyboard. Now in my storyboard, really simple, I've stuck an image view and I've stuck this funny little emoji thing on top so that I can tell that it's actually the custom one and not just the default one. And inside the view controller, as I said, we conform to this UN notification content extension protocol. I've got the image view. When I receive the notification, exactly as it said on the slide, all I'm doing is grabbing that data, creating an image from that URL and then providing it to the image view. And then the other one is this same again. When you click the action button that says star, it will show the stars. And then once that's happened, it'll wait 2 seconds and then it'll dismiss it. One of the things about this, sorry, I didn't mention, was this takes a completion handler, and you pass the completion handler this handy type UN notification content extension response option, where you can choose what should I do with that response. Now that person's tapped it, do I ignore it? Do I pass it on to the app, or do I just dismiss? So this here I'm saying is I want you to dismiss the notification, but I then want you to call that method on the app delegate that you would call when you normally tap that. Okay, so if I try and fire a notification, there we go, and if I force touch into it, you can see, there we go, it comes up, it loads up the custom UI, as you'd expect, and if I hit the star my cuddle button, then we get some rather attractive falling stars, and then it dismisses it. Imagine that. Whew. People don't pay me to make apps, why not? Look at that. Right, I should be a designer. Right, intercepting push notifications, the final thing, right. So we've spoken about one of the new extension types. There is another one called a service extension. And with this, you can intercept push notifications. What does that mean? You can kind of think of it as a map function for those of you who are au fait with Swift. Oh, it's in Objective-C as well, JavaScript. For those of people who know what a map function is, it's a map function. If you don't know what a map function is, it doesn't matter. So you can imagine your push notifications come in, and you get an opportunity to do something to that push notification before it then gets displayed to the user. You get provided with the notification request, and you have to return the content. Remember that we made the content before with the attachment and all that kind of stuff? You get given the request and you say, I want you to replace the content it came with this content that I think is better. You only get a short amount of time to do this, and as such, there is a method in there that will will call you back saying, you've had too long, give us the best that you can. And, the push notification must explicitly allow mutation. And I can hopefully demo that, but I think I'm pushing my luck. We'll get to there in a second. So this looks far too much code for what I want to display. Basically, this is the function that does most of the work inside there. You get this did receive notification request with a content handler. Now, a couple of things I'm doing here is I'm grabbing hold of the content handler and the best attempt content, so the current content that it has arrived with. It already comes with some content. I want to replace it. I'm keeping references to those, and you'll see why in a moment. So this is in a class, right? And I'm just keeping those as class local variables. No, what are they called? Properties. That's the word, properties. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into this, and I've got this attachment URL that I've provided as part of the push notification. And this reminds me that I've not said why I want to do this. Right, push notifications, you have a limited amount of data, right, that you can send. I think it's 4K now, is that right? You can't send many massive pictures of my face in 4K. So I need to do this. So what I'm going to do is I provide the URL inside the push notification, and in this thing here, I'm going to try and download that image. You'll be disappointed it's not my face, but you can imagine it is. And then once I've got that image, I can create a new attachment with that and then set that to be the new content with the notification and then call back the completion handler. Now, why did I keep a reference to those two things? And that's because there is this thing here, service extension time will expire. That's, you've had too long to do this. We need to display it to the user. And in that case, I'm just going to go with the stuff that I first got sent, that I got sent in the first place. Or maybe I can do a little bit of work, but I haven't managed to get the image, so I can put a placeholder image in or something like that. That's precisely what I was doing with that. Okay, if this works, I should be very surprised. Because I need my phone off aeroplane mode. Oh, that's working already. Oh, now it's off. I need it on the Wi-Fi. You going to work? Oh, I'm on the Wi-Fi. This is good news. Right. If I zoom in a little bit. So I've got this, this is set up using Pusher, so this just pushes, this is the push notification payload, right? So it's fairly standard stuff. I've put some stuff in the alert. A couple of things that are quite important. If I change that to 0 first, I've forgotten to show you the code again. I've only got 2 minutes. Imagine the code on that slide, but inside Xcode, and then that's basically the same. So now, in theory, so that's what that looks like, and notice this attachment URL, that's the thing that we're going to download. If this, I can't believe this is right, and if I do this, and I attempt to push this, that's been pushed. Does it arrive? No, it doesn't. Come on. Surely not. Oh, well, there's one here. Oh, that's now. That's the one that arrived, right? Let's try again. Brilliant, thank you. I don't know how to use this thing. There we go. So, a couple of things. First of all, because I've got this category in there to be new cuddle pics, then it's realized that I need those two buttons, the star my cuddle, which obviously still looks amazing. However, it's not downloaded the image, and that's because when you specify, that's really small, but when you send your payload, you have to say, I'm okay with the system mutating this by putting that mutable content to 1. And if I push again, then it arrives, and if I force touch into that, then it's downloaded that image and it's put it in there, which is what you want it to do, right? That's cool. And then the stars still look, I like the stars. Not that I spent most of my time making the stars. That's definitely not what happened. Not at all. Okay, so I've got 1 minute, so I'm going to do a summary, and it's these 4 things. The new notification, nearly said center, new user notification thingy, that's really annoying. That new user notification thingy is a central place for all of the user notification stuff now, and that makes life so much easier. The only bit of notifications that's not in there is the remote notifications, which now is 1 method on the application and then 1 method, I guess, on the, or 2 methods on the application delegate. You can do the querying of the settings and find out the enqueued local notifications, which is really cool. You can extend the user experience with custom notification UI. That's the stuff that I showed you there. And you can get interactivity kind of through using the actions. And you can enhance the push notifications with the service extensions. So although I did downloading images, you can do other things as well. You can imagine that maybe if you were doing a, what's the word? Like some kind of cryptography. So that then all of the push notification went through completely encrypted. And then it arrived on your device. And there you did the decryption. So there, never would anybody be able to decrypt the push notification, which is again quite cool. So my recommendation is to make the switch, if you can. This is iOS 10 only. How many people have the luxury of building iOS 10 only apps? I am so glad I've spent the last 30 minutes talking to you about it. So imagine like in a year's time, are you dropping iOS 8 now? Yeah? So in a year's time, you'll be able to use this. My pleasure. I'm so ahead of the curve. And there's the obligatory slide with some links and stuff on it that everybody likes to take a photo of. I did a series, I've done loads of screencasts now about iOS 10 for Ray Wenderlich. I didn't mention I work for Ray, right? I work for Ray. They're available on raywenderlich.com, videos.wenderlich.com. There were 2 sessions from WWDC on this, 707, 708, and their reference for user notifications is pretty good as well. There's most of the information in there. The code is available on my GitHub. I'm on Twitter, and I will post the slides later today. And I don't put the slides on there, because then you might follow me on Twitter, and then I get some kind of ego boost. Thank you very much for listening. I'll talk to you later. Bye. Does anybody have any questions? That's good. I won't be able to answer them. Yes, I'll go.
I believe I might have an answer to the question that you stated in the beginning, asking why the current is a method and not a property.
Oh, yes, please.
And that's because I believe Objective-C class properties are very, very new, and probably as when
they just haven't got around to it.
They haven't revisited that, yeah.
That's the only explanation I could come up with. That everything else, like default in the notification center, is now a class property, I think, but not this yet. That's what happens when you change things in beta 6.
Any more questions?
Cool. Well, I'm around today, tomorrow. If you have any questions, do come and talk to me. Thank you ever so much for listening to me.
Thank you, Sam.